Hello and a warm welcome to Federal's special program, Capital Beat. In what was seen as a closely fought contest has now turned into an astounding victory for Donald Trump, who's all poised now to become the 47th president of America. People are rejoicing, people are celebrating, some people are cautious, lots of reactions coming in on the victory of Donald Trump. But the big question we are asking, what does Trump's victory mean for India and the world? And what are the factors which have led to Trump's victory and the defeat of Kamala Harris? We'll try and look into all these aspects. Joining me now is Ambassador Veena Sikri. Thank you, ma'am, so much for joining. We have Sanjay Kapoor, who's the international affairs expert. Thank you so much, Sanjay, for joining. And we have Dakshin Murthy, who is the managing editor of the Federal. Thank you so much, Dakshin, for joining. And I'll begin with Sanjay, and then I'll come to Veena Sikri. Sanjay, what does Trump's victory really mean at this point of time for America? And also, why do you think that people voted more for Trump than Kamala Harris?
Thank you for asking me to lead this program. I find it a bit of a surprise that Mr. Trump managed to get so many votes compared to he's not only won his own power, he got more votes, but also the Senate has gone the way the Republicans. So it's a massive victory. And why did it all happen? It happened because at some stage there has been a loss of liberalism that was represented by Biden and Kamala Harris. And besides, I think what is not being spoken of, not to even in hushed tones, is that America is not ready to have a woman president because there are a lot of people who may have voted for no other reason except that they didn't want to have a woman as a president. So that is one thing. What are the implications for India and the world? I think Mr. Trump, by his very nature and his very bullish way of campaigning, is extremely disruptive. It is not something he is not going to go quietly, and he's not going to conduct himself as a president who will take everybody along. He's made it amply clear that he would lock the gates of the U.S. Not many people are going to come in, and on top of that, he's saying that he would deport the biggest deportation he's promising, about 11 million people out of his 750,000 Armenians. So expect a lot of interesting things with Mr. Trump coming in, and this is just the starting. Today is the first day when he's won. So when he takes oath next year, you will find a lot of things that may have, in a certain way, shifted, and there would be people who will be aligning their policies according to what the U.S. wants.
Okay, so I'll come to Ambassador Veena Sikri. What Sanjay was saying that he looks the victory looks disruptive, and in terms of illegal deportations, what do you think it means for India? India needs to be cautious, or India should be rejoicing. Prime Minister Modi has already put out a tweet saying, "My friend Donald Trump has won." So, what does it really mean, Trump's victory for India?
Look, first of all, I think we must respect the wishes of the American people. They have voted for the Republicans, and I think by a convincing majority. So we have to respect that whatever President Donald Trump represents is what the American people think they want for the next 4 years, and so they have not voted for Kamala Harris. Of course, there may be the gender factor that is very much talked about in the US, that there is a gender aspect to it, but there is something beyond that as well. And I think that a lot of it has to do also with the two wars, the Ukraine conflict and the one in the Middle East. These were so divisive within America, and America saw that rather than money being spent within the country, flying out of the country in terms of weapons and finance for Zelensky and for Prime Minister Netanyahu. So obviously, this has impacted the American economy adversely, and I think the American people, the youngsters, there's been a lot of people who thought that the youngsters would vote for Kamala Harris, but they have voted for President Trump, even among the blacks, even among the Muslim community. So, I think that people in America, they have shown their interest in bringing an end to the wars and having peace and stability and growth for themselves. I think for India, this is very much in keeping with our interests. I think that we know that between 2016 and 20, Prime Minister Modi had an excellent relationship with President Trump, and a lot of progress was made. I'm not saying there are not going to be differences. There will be differences on trade. President Trump has already talked about India as being, the tariff master of the world and so on. So there will be differences, but whatever it is, this can be solved to mutual benefit and on the basis of mutual trust. And I think this is there. Certainly, in terms of the Ukraine war, Prime Minister Modi's meetings with President Putin and his repeated emphasis that this is not an era of war, we want dialogue and diplomacy, is very much in keeping with what President Trump has been saying. So I think that there is a great synergy that will rekindle itself between India and USA. There were a number of initiatives in the Biden years as well. The ICET, the Initiative for Critical Emerging Technologies, and the decision on the GE engine. But equally, there were things which are not being implemented at the speed at which they had been promised, and there were additional factors. There was the Panun factor, the Canadian factor, the Bangladesh factor. There's so many others. I mean, on Bangladesh, for example, I think President Trump must be the first president who campaigned and actually spoke on two factors: on the killing of Hindus in Bangladesh, the barbaric he called it, on the chaos in Bangladesh, and on the Hindu phobia in American academia and among the liberal left radicals. This is absolutely, not seen that any president-elect would have ever thought it appropriate to talk about these things. And certainly we've seen among the Indian diaspora, which is one of the most well-established and well-off diaspora that anywhere in the world, I think their votes have moved away from Democrats and have gone more and more to Trump. And Trump has reflected on this, and he's surely going to include many of them in his administration. So I think there is obviously, clearly, even on a very preliminary look at it, a great synergy building up. And I think we should be very happy. Prime Minister Modi's message strongly reflected this commonality of interest that he sees. And there will be many issues on which we will be able to work together. China is one of them. And China, I think you can see clearly now an increasing isolation of China compared to the Biden years when, on the face of it, Biden spoke about isolation and continued some of the Trump one policies. But on the other hand, he sent all his senior leaders there. He sent, Yellen and Blinken, and then he met Xi Jinping also in America. So obviously he was on a dual track approach. And we do know that the very deep pockets of the Democrats, and they have different views on so many issues. I think all of this will change, and I do look forward to a very positive, dynamic relationship.
Actually, coming back to those factors and what Donald Trump today said at Florida Convention Center while he was making his victory speech, he said that he will try and fix all the wrongs which have been done. He will try and fix the borders. Now, what do you think has been the sole reason, as far as the American society is concerned, why they voted for Trump? Do they see him as some sort of a custodian of American pride, of American? How does one see that? And because the American society was deeply polarized, and people fear that there will be a lot of hate mongering now, and it'll increase. But what does it really show about the American mindset, which has voted for Trump in large numbers?
In fact, I would say that the victory of Donald Trump is a reflection of the polarization that has already occurred in the US. Because if you look at Trump, he was a very polarizing figure, and let's not forget the kind of things his supporters did, at his behest on Capitol Hill on Jan 6th when, he lost the elections, and he continued to insist that the elections were stolen. I know. So he by himself is a person, is a very controversial figure. There are so many cases against him. The various courts had indicted him on so many different counts. Despite all that he's back as president indicates a much deeper fault line within the US. There are many aspects to the Donald Trump's victory. Donald Trump symbolizes the white American Anglo-Saxon person, and then on the other side you had Kamala Harris, who was a Afro-Asian of Afro-Asian origin and a brown person. So now the point here is the Trump campaign never tried to be be moderate at any point of time in their campaign. They played these things up, the kind of names they called Kamala Harris. So the point also is that if you look at Trump, who are the people who support him fundamentally? They're evangelical Christians. They have in large numbers, they completely back Trump, and they're all for him. So there is a kind of a deeper polarization that happens, and Trump is a consequence of that. Trump is not going to cause a polarization. The polarization has already happened thanks to him and his supporters, and now it's a reflection of the success of that polarizing drive or campaign that he mounted. It was a very bitterly fought campaign, and of course now there are analysts who point out that the issues were more of an economic issues dictated the victory. The inflation was high. There are issues with employment, and then you also have the issue of immigration. Now, immigration, as far as immigration was concerned, huge big figures were stated. Very little evidence was given to back the allegations of the Republican lobby and the Trump campaign, but they just went ahead with it. So it is a kind of a really very forcefully campaigned election in which there are a lot of so-called facts that were pointed out, which none of them could be with fact check. They couldn't have worked. You remember in the presidential debate, he talked about the immigrants eating cats and dogs in some place. I mean, so this is the kind of campaign, and to see that despite all this, can you imagine an individual who mounts challenge against the democracy, the democratic structure of the United States, coming back as president? So there is fundamentally something seriously going on in the US, which is not at all good.
And if something is seriously wrong within the American society, Sanjay, I would come back to the same question, that what is the kind of ripple effect it's going to have on other countries? And I'm talking about other countries. When I say, I'm talking about India, I'm talking about China, and now with Trump at the helm of affairs, how is it really going to pan out?
It is very difficult to imagine what all his mandate is capable of. We could be driven by the Heritage Foundation Mandate 25, which has been talked about quite a bit on the internet and other places. It talks about turning it into a very authoritarian state, where he would, change the curriculum, do pretty much what we have seen in India, maybe worse, and do things that are totally unacceptable and unthinkable in a country which fosters liberal values like the US. But a lot of things are possible. But what he would end up doing, is to give legitimacy to all kinds of authoritarians all over the world to do pretty much what they want. For instance, in Erdogan's Turkey, there could be a similar kind of mindset. Then Orban might get in Hungary a similar kind of endorsement that he's looking for. And it could happen all over the place. I remember when he was the president in between 2016 2019, he would not intervene on matters that concern moral values. He was not somebody who would talk about human rights. He doesn't talk about all those issues which have been the hallmark of the American politicians for a while. His contentions, his desires, or his motivations are totally driven by what the America wants. And he's got this strange thing about making US great again. US was never anything but great. Even when Biden was there, I think it was a very powerful country. If they are responsible for driving the two countries to war, so you can imagine they are even capable of dousing fires in all these places, which might happen in the coming days. But it has always been a very, very powerful country. It has managed to do very well. The economy was also rocking, but he managed to convey to the people who have voted for him that there was something seriously flawed in the way US has been run, because US is a country of immigrants with all kinds of sections of people driving, converging and thinking differently, and at the same time thinking like each other, to vote for a leader like that. But the fact of the matter is that US is a country where something like this will have a very, very dangerous impact in many parts of the world. And we have to see how it plays out in the coming days.
Ambassador Sikri, a lot of leaders have congratulated Donald Trump on his astounding victory, but the Russian president hasn't congratulated. In fact, there is a spokesperson from the Kremlin who said that, congratulations can wait. What does one read of this?
Well, this is the first test, I think, for President Trump and his declaration that he'll bring an end to the wars. He said that even today, when he was making his victory speech, he said, I'm not going to have any wars, I'm going to end wars. So obviously, I think what President Putin is indicating, that he's waiting for some kind of a statement or expression of interest from President Trump or from his administration, and then they would see whether, they would go ahead. And but I think that President Trump and President Putin have had good relations in the past. Whether this extremely difficult Ukraine-Russian conflict, has put a dampener on it, or whether President Trump is going to make that as an example, as a case study, because that he does not want war. I think the whole world is watching. Europe also is in a very difficult position, because they make all these statements about supporting Zelensky and so on. They're cutting off their gas supplies, petroleum product supplies from Russia, but their economies are in the doldrums, and world growth will be seriously affected. Should a war like the Ukraine conflict and the Middle East conflict, should it go? So there's, I think, on one thing is that I think he has to show his credibility on this, and I think he will. The other thing is that he has said something today in his victory speech. He said how we finished off ISIS in record time. So his interest in anti-terrorism, in ending the terrorist groups. Now, we do know that in the Middle East conflict, there are these three huge terrorist groups: the Hamas, the Houthi, and the Hezbollah, who have been, very active and getting support from Qatar, from Lebanon, and other countries. Now, is President Trump going to be serious about this and really trying to end the role of these terrorist groups, which have actually taken over states? Hamas has taken over the Palestinian state, and Hezbollah has taken over Lebanon, and Houthi is more or less running in Yemen. So it's really an amazing situation that has come to pass in the world. So is President Trump going to be serious on this, on ending? So that also means that the relationship with Iran. Now, if he's going to do something about President Putin, then you have immediately the question comes about the China-Russia relationship. And I do think that today what has come from President Putin's spokesperson probably has a lot to do with what China and Russia must have consulted each other on. And China certainly has not been so forthcoming with their congratulatory statement either. So there is a question there. So will China be isolated? Will the Russian-China partnership go ahead together? Will they work together to end the conflict with Ukraine? What is the role that China is going to play in all of this? There are a lot of questions there, but certainly everything will be known once Trump appoints his administration, and the administration starts working among themselves. And look, so far for the last several years, all that we've heard is that weaponry is flowing, finance is flowing, endless stream, billions and billions and billions of dollars. Everybody's even lost count. And similarly, of course, to Prime Minister Netanyahu in Israel as well. So if he's serious about ending wars, I think we should see an immediate role on this. I think we have to wait for it. I don't think we should be so pessimistic about the President Trump's administration. He will have legacy interests. He will have learned from his first 4 years and from the 4 years in the interim when he was assailed from all sides, but now he has won the presidency with a convincing majority, and certainly with the votes of those who were considered almost inevitably to be voting for Kamala Harris, but they haven't voted for her. So there's something to be learned from that about what's happening within America. And I think we should have patience and wait and see.
Right. You were talking about legacy interest, and I was looking at a tweet by Jairam Ramesh Dakshin, which says that Donald Trump has staged an astonishing comeback. Undoubtedly, why and how it happened will be analyzed in great detail over the next few weeks, as will the question of what this comeback means for the USA and the rest of the world. But what is certain is that the future of the 2015 Paris Agreement on climate change, which America had rejoined under President Biden, is now extremely shaky. If the US were to withdraw again, it would be disastrous. Now, is this going to be like a big test for Donald Trump? Because if he withdraws from the climate agreement, what happens then?
Nothing. It will just fall. Trump is known for all this. I mean, why shouldn't we even be debating all this? Because Trump will do what he wants to do. He walked out of for instance, in the 2016 to 20 term, he simply walked out of the nuclear deal with Iran, which is not just a US-Iran deal. It was a largely, EU and the UN was there, and you had the US, of course. The US, Trump one fine day decided to walk out, and he walked out. So he will do exactly what he wants. Climate change, he will toss it into the rubbish bin. So that's it. I don't think he cares about all these things. So that's Trump for you. So he doesn't care about anything. Doesn't care about US democracy. Doesn't care about what he's talking. He doesn't care about anything. So he'll just do what he wants. And the Americans want him. So, well, that's it. It's
Right.
their,
No, you
after point, it's their problem.
Right. No, you rightly pointed out that Trump is Trump and he'll do whatever he wants. And he cares two hoots about the democracy. He cares nothing about the human rights. Now, Sanjay, coming to the fact that now the Trump is going to be the president of America, and if he's going to be like that, and he's also highlighted in his victory speech that for him, America first, he's going to protect the interests of the Americans first. So, does India need to be cautious? Of course, we should not be pessimistic, as what Ambassador Sikri pointed out. But what are the challenges when it comes to now the relationship between US and India?
I think India needs to be very, very cautious about which way Mr. Trump will go. We need to have a policy, and we need to firm it up. How would he impact our trade? How would he impact our relationship with our neighbors? Because last time, if you remember, when Mr. Trump was the president, the Chinese got into Galwan, and they did that for so long. I'm wondering as to why they did it when Trump was there. If somebody so muscular is the president of the U.S., why did they choose to do it? And so we need to be totally on guard. We may be friendly with him because he can do a lot of things, but we need to have a clear idea of what is of interest to us rather than what is of interest to him. And he would try to shape everything to his advantage when in his interpretation of U.S. first or making U.S. great again. But that should not be at a cost, because he has a tendency of arm twisting. He will do that with Europe. He'll compel them to pay up for NATO. He'll compel many others to start giving money. He will help out his own American friends when it comes to the motorcycle and all those things for which he wants the tariff to be reduced. So we have to be very clear how much we can take it and how much we can't take it. And we should have the I think that there's a need to be strong. Only then we'll have good relationship with them.
All right. So now let me get in the concluding comments from Ambassador Sikri and Dakshin both. Ambassador Sikri, what would you really say now? The reality is that Trump is now the president. People had thought that this was a tightly fought contest between Kamala Harris. There was a lot of possibility that Kamala Harris could have won. She put up a great fight. She spoke about abortion rights and everything, to consolidate the women voters, but that also didn't happen. So now, what would you really say to the future of America under Donald Trump?
Well, I think first of all, we have to recognize that yes, you're right. Kamala Harris did have a great fight, and she had a lot of issues and a lot of supporters. But one has to recognize then the American people have voted for President Trump's manifesto, whatever he had put forward as what he would do, and they prefer his manifesto to the one which was being proclaimed by Kamala Harris. And in fact, some people from the US were saying that, the indication was that Kamala Harris would not be her own person, and she would be pushed around by the other interests, by the deep state, by former Obama, and so on, by former President Clinton, and she would not really be her own person. Now, President Trump is certainly his own person, and he wants America to be great again. But every country has their own. We have our policy of strategic autonomy, and we would hope that President Trump will respect that. We've seen it at work in terms of what's happening in the Ukraine conflict, and in so many other issues, Atmanirbharta, purchase of oil from Russia, so many other issues. So I think that we have to first and foremost get an understanding on this. And yes, we want the Indo-US relationship to prosper because there's a great deal of agreements already concluded in the pipeline, which is there. And also President Trump in his previous term, he had a great understanding about South Asia, about India's role in South Asia, about the cooperation in South Asia, about the need for all of South Asia to grow together. And that's why he spoke, as I said just now, on Bangladesh as well, because he realized that that was a model relationship. So I think we need to know what are his views on all these subjects. And certainly, of course, when you're campaigning and when you get down to the business of governance, there can be differences. We recognize that. So obviously, we have to wait and see. But I do think that President Trump's presidency offers a great opportunity. And I think if he continues his support for India, India's role in as a permanent member of the Security Council, so many other issues, multilateralism, is he going to have a, we have to wait and see what he's going to say on all this. But I do think that it's true he's very erratic. He says, so many things on the spur of the moment. But maybe this time the team that he has thought of will be some that, that we will, the legacy issue will be very high in his mind, I'm sure. And also for the future role of the Republican Party. He's talking about people on university campuses. I mean, they should be studying, but they are all politicized. They're all participating in demonstrations, one or the other. And there's so many, many issues. Let us wait and see. I do have great hopes for the future of India-Russia relationship. At least we hope that President Trump will recognize the importance of India's growing and becoming, one of the poles of the world. The Quad, I think the Quad will see a great boost. I think, in 2025, India is all set to host the Quad Summit. So President Trump will be coming to India in 2025, we hope, for the Quad Summit. All that is to be worked out. There's a great deal on the agenda, on the table, and what President Trump will think about India will be worked out in discussion with our leaders. And I can tell you, I think it will be better than what it was in the last 4 years.
So you said that it's going to open a window of opportunities towards the end, Dakshin. Is it going to open a window of opportunities, or is it really going to open? It could open. I'm going to use the word "could" in quotes. That could it open a window of chaos as well? That's what everybody worries. So that is why I'm going to ask you this question towards the end, Dakshin. If you could shed light on
I mean, as someone who's not an American, somebody who's an Indian, really what I'm interested in, as would many others be, how he is going to deal with the Ukraine-Russia war, and is he really going to end the war in a manner that is satisfactory to both, or is he going to? So how he's going to do it? That's the first thing that we are really looking forward to. The second is the absolute assault that's been going on, the Israeli assault on Gaza that's been going on for more than 1 year. How is he going to deal with that? What kind of a position he's going to take on the Palestinians? In the past, he's been very harsh on Palestine, and he's been extremely, extremely pro-Israel, far more than Biden was. Biden himself was criticized for not doing anything on Gaza. So it would be very interesting to see what Trump will do on these two really big, major issues. And as far as the US itself is concerned, let's see what he does on immigration. He's spoken a lot. Let's see what he does on inflation. Let's see what he does on the economy, whether it's all going to be gas or it's going to be of substance. So let's see. I mean, so these are the points that I would, as a non-American, see it.
Right. So a lot of walking the talk, I think President Trump will have to do. But for now, yes, it's Abki Bar Trump Sarkar. That's what the slogan has proved to be true.
Yeah.
So we'll have to wait and watch how things unfold in America, and all eyes would be on that. Thank you so much, Ambassador Veena Sikri, Sanjay, Dakshin. It was wonderful to have you on the program. Thank you.
Thank you.